There was growing desperation along the U.S. Gulf Coast today after word that an offshore oil spill is much larger than initial estimates. The leading edge moved within 3 miles of a national wildlife reserve and could begin staining the shore by tonight. Tom Bearden begins our coverage.
Those reddish streaks in the water are oil, a massive slick, and the leak may be 5 times larger than previously believed and closing in on the U.S. Gulf Coast. Late Wednesday, the Coast Guard reported a third leak at the wellhead a mile deep. It was discovered by BP, which operated the offshore rig that exploded and sank at the site last week.
Specifically, BP has just briefed me on a new location of an additional breach in the riser of the deep underwater well. While BP believes, and we believe, and established a 1,000 barrel per day estimate of what is leaking from the well, NOAA experts believe the output can be as much as 5,000 barrels.
At first, BP disputed that estimate, but by this morning, the oil company exploration chief Doug Suttles told ABC News the leak could indeed be that large.
What we can say, based on what we're picking up on the surface, it looks like it is more. So I think something between 1 and 5,000 barrels a day is a reasonable estimate.
At that rate, the well could leak more than 4 million gallons by the time a relief well can be drilled to ease the pressure feeding the spill. BP collected and burned off some of the oil yesterday, but there were no new burns today due to the weather. Instead, boats scrambled to herd the oil inside booms and scatter dispersant chemicals to keep the slick from reaching the environmentally fragile coast. Louisiana declared a state of emergency with the leading edge of the spill nearing Plaquemines Parish at the mouth of the Mississippi River. In Washington, federal officials promised more skimmers, booms, and other aid. Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano said the government is watching BP's work closely.
We will continue to push BP to engage in the strongest response possible. We will continue to oversee their efforts, to add to those efforts where we deem necessary, and to ensure again that under the law that the taxpayers of the United States ultimately are reimbursed for those efforts.
Later, President Obama promised military help and stepped up inspections of other rigs in the Gulf.
I have ordered the Secretaries of Interior and Homeland Security, as well as Administrator Lisa Jackson of the Environmental Protection Agency, to visit the site on Friday to ensure that BP and the entire U.S. government is doing everything possible, not just to respond to this incident, but also to determine its cause. And I've been in contact with all the governors of the states that may be affected by this accident.
Here in Venice, Louisiana, about 2 hours south of New Orleans, workers are loading small boats, setting up more booms in all the estuaries in the area. But Billy Nungesser, the president of Plaquemines Parish, says it isn't happening nearly fast enough. He says if more booms aren't in place by tonight, the entire fishery is seriously jeopardized.
We loaded out some boom early this morning, and we're waiting for another vessel. The sense of urgency is not there to protect the wetlands that we had hoped for. We're asking for a line of defense in the marshlands. Tonight we're going to see 25 to 35 mile-an-hour winds. How far inland? We know that oil's coming ashore. I mean, it's obvious. How far inland is it going to come?
Today, fisherman Joe Norman told us the spill could devastate the economy of the entire region.
We just fixed an open season up. We was just fixing to go back to work to make money, and now they tell us we depend on this, you know? And now they're telling us they're fixing to shut us down by the weekend. So we don't know what to think. We just can't believe it.
Late yesterday, 2 commercial fisheries in Louisiana filed a $5 million lawsuit against the rig's owners and operators.
Late today, the governor of Louisiana, Bobby Jindal, said the first impact of the oil spill was expected to hit a key wildlife habitat tonight. That was based on weather predictions from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
The fact the winds are in the direction they're predicting, the fact that tides are higher than normal are both negative factors as far as Louisiana's coast. The heavier oil is now moving towards us. You may remember yesterday and previously they talked about the lighter sheen coming on Louisiana's coast first. The winds have actually flipped around, and this is a very layman's description, but because of the wind we're now getting some of that heavier oil. We're actually expecting to hit our coast, not the lighter sheen they were describing before.
A short time ago, I talked more with our Tom Bearden in Venice, Louisiana. So, Tom, tell us a little bit more about the level of fear and anxiety that you're hearing from people you're talking to.
There is a considerable amount of both fear and anxiety. The fishermen and women we talked to today were very concerned that when this oil comes ashore that there is not adequate protection for all the various estuaries around here. As one person described it, it's kind of like the hands of a finger jutting out into the ocean. Everyone has a fishery in it, and they're worried there are not enough booms to cover the ends of all those fingers. There's a lot of booming material out there, but as the oil comes ashore, they're concerned it's going to overtop those booms, go around them, and come in and settle around and destroy the fish that their entire livelihood depends upon. The entire economy of this area depends upon that.
Is it a question of getting the material, the booms, into place? Is the equipment there and it's a question of getting into place, or what?
It's the size of the job, I think. There's a lot of equipment, there's a lot of booms, but there's also thousands of miles of shoreline and lots of places where the oil can infiltrate. It's an enormous job. In fact, as one Coast Guard representative I spoke with about an hour ago said, they'd like to have booms all the way to Florida. There's no way that's going to happen in the next few days, and obviously it's a job that is beyond their capabilities right now. He says they're trying everything they can, but it's just a huge job.
It also sounds, though, like you're hearing some anger from people about the level of response, the speed of response.
No question about that. There's great concern among some people that this is, at least in the early stages, a repeat of the lack of response that occurred in Hurricane Katrina. The president of Plaquemines Parish says he's very afraid that there's a lack of coordination and leadership being exhibited here, much the same way he saw occurred in Hurricane Katrina, and that things are just not happening fast enough.
And the fishermen want to be able to do more themselves, right? To get out there and set up booms and take actions on their own. They're not being allowed to?
They believe that they know these waters better than anybody else. I don't think the Coast Guard would probably dispute that either. But there is a concern that, among the Coast Guard at least, that this is an operation that shouldn't risk anybody's life or risk anybody's safety or health, and they're concerned about liability. The fishermen, on the other hand, say, listen, our entire livelihood depends on this. We're expert boatmen. We know these waters better than anybody else. We're perfectly capable of putting these booms out there and protecting what keeps us afloat.
And we've just heard late this afternoon from Louisiana's governor saying they expect it might hit as early as tonight. What do you hear from where you are?
Well, the original expectation this morning was tomorrow night, but the Plaquemines Parish president again said if these booms that he thinks should be in place, ought to be in place right now, at least as early as tonight. If they're not, he thinks the fishery is going to be seriously damaged. You need to understand the geography of this. This is a very long peninsula. It's a very big spill, and it can come ashore over a massive, very long distance and thwart the efforts that have been made so far.
All right, Tom Bearden in Louisiana. Thanks so much. Take care. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.
Sure.